So in 1982, there was a newspaper headline in the Springfield Union in Massachusetts, Springfield Union newspaper. And it said this, it sounded like a real Unity headline to me. This mom lifted a car off her trapped child, and so can you. And so in the story, this woman, Angela Cavallo, lifted the car up off her son Tony, who had been working under the car when the jack slipped and it fell on him. You've probably heard stories like this before. They're often mothers and grandmothers, right, that find this superhuman strength to lift cars when their babies are in trouble. And something about that is so fascinating, isn't it, that how could we do it? Of course, scientists get to work on the how. They start to surmise and theorize as to what could be happening here, and often they think it's because of the adrenaline that runs through our bodies. But the studies have been inconclusive time and time again. It's still a mystery. What is it that causes us to find that kind of superhuman strength, sometimes called hysterical strength? Right? In those moments, right? It feels pretty hysterical, so you can understand that. Well, Angela said that her secret was prayer. She said she prayed the entire time through the whole experience as she was trying to lift the car, as she lifted the car, as she, got help to pull her son out from underneath. So all of that happened was through the power of prayer, through the power of spirit. It wasn't physical strength, although physical strength is a part of it. It's the power of spirit working through the physical body. It's one of the things I love about these 12 powers that we are sharing this summer is this kind of key teachings of unity, is that they are so inclusive of the holistic aspects of our beings, that we are divine human beings, that we are human beings having a spiritual experience. And so it's that power and that energy of spirit that gets ignited when we pay attention to each of these powers, and it is through the physical, the mental, the emotional bodies that we become stronger. And so as Sharon was just singing, bring those broken pieces, right? And then, whoa, I get strong, I get strengthened, I get invigorated by recognizing that no matter what happens to me, what challenges I may go through, that the power of strength is available to me. There's a saying that says, people are like tea bags. They don't know how strong they are until they're in hot water. Isn't that a good one? For those of you who are tea drinkers, maybe you'll remember that every time. I drink tea every morning, so I'm going to remember this every time. I'm going to try. That's going to be my intention anyway. So we see this power of strength, as I mentioned, in all these different ways that that our beings show up in all these different dimensions of who we are. And strength shows up as resourcefulness at times, right? It shows up as resilience. It shows up as support or being supportive to another. It shows up as openness, as willingness to be taught, to be guided, to be shown the way. All of this is a part of what strength is. Strength and faith are brothers. So in the 12 powers, there are, as I read earlier, Tamar is the biblical woman, the character, the woman of the chalice that represents the power of strength. And Andrew is the disciple who becomes an apostle, of course, who represents strength. His name means strong man in Greek. And he is the brother of Peter, who represents faith. And so Andrew is the second disciple called. So we have faith, which we called forth last week and activated and ignited in the middle of our minds, that power of faith that is signified by royal blue. And now we call forth strength that is found in the low back. It's signified by light green and represented by the brother of faith. So you can see why these two powers are truly related, right? When you begin to think about strength and faith and how they interplay with one another. So faith, we talked about a little bit last week, a sense of knowing. We defined it as a group, actually, in a lot of different ways, but that's one of the ways we defined it. And so you could think of faith as a spiritual reassurance, right, or assurance, a sense of conviction or confidence, where strength is like the spiritual capability that shows, right, how it works, how we process through, how we live a life of strength and faith. So they play off of one another in such a way. It takes faith to have that innate knowing, to be strong when we need to be strong, right, in our lives. And as we exercise our spiritual strength, we grow, expand into a greater level of faith, because we see for ourselves what is possible, and that expands the borders of what we now think is possible in our realm of faith. So brothers, indeed, faith and strength. So strength comes also in the form of resilience. Anybody have any WD-40 at home? Yeah. I remember the first time I saw the magic of WD-40. Do you remember your first WD-40 experience? Yeah, some of you do. I was a young woman and I was locked out of my apartment or something, and my lock was jammed, and somebody came along with this magical thing called WD-40 and squirted it in the lock, and I thought, well, what in the world is that going to do? And then, whoop, there's the key, and I was in the apartment in no time. So, wow, what is this stuff? Do you know what WD-40 stands for? Water displacement perfected on the 40th try. It took them 40 times to get the formula just right so that it worked in that magical way, in such a way that we all know what WD-40 is, and we probably already have it somewhere on a shelf at home, right? So it's that willingness to stay the course, right? 40, we talk about 40 a lot. It's that Hebrew numerology number that means as long as it takes. So strength is resilience, strength is patience, strength is a willingness to try again and again and again until we get to that place that we have envisioned in our minds, or even something better the Spirit has brought along. So 1,400 miles and 140 years, that's how long the Lakota nation waited and how far they traveled. On Friday, they were able to bring 9 children home from a Pennsylvania boarding school who had made their life transition 140 years ago. It was such a moving ceremony. If you saw any of it, they were carrying these small coffins, these 9 coffins, and there was chanting, and there was praying, and there was whoops and hoops and hollers of joy and celebration and sacredness in the air, bringing our ancestors home after all these years. There is heartbreak there, yes? Resilience allows us to move through heartbreak. Resilience allows us to move through breakdown. Resilience brings us to breakthrough. That finally, after all this waiting, finally, after all this heartache, something that is so important to Indigenous people, their ancestors, the sacredness of home and land, come together, and that these 9 children could now be properly buried back home. They came back to the Rosebud Sioux Indian Reservation in South Dakota, and the state representative from South Dakota, Sean Bordeaux, who is an enrolled member of the Rosebud tribe, said this: "These spirits will be able to join up with their families, and they won't have that lost soul feeling, like there's some kind of disconnect that there has been. But now there's a reconnect." The ability to find the celebration and the sacredness in life, even amidst extreme heartache, is the power of strength. It's the spiritual power of strength that supports us through anything that might come our way or come by the way of our community, our tribe, our people, our nation. Strength is bolstered by community support, and Indigenous peoples often are great teachers to us of how important community is, that a community literally has your back, right? That's a part of it, right? That you receive support and you give support in a community. That's what community is about. Growing together, rebuilding or building together, creating and co-creating together, crying together, grieving together, moving forward together in heart and mind, in body, in every way. So it's no surprise the strength is found here in the low back, right? Because you think about all the things your low back does for you, bending and stooping and stretching and walking and sitting and lying down. And then when it gets hurt, you really notice, right? You really notice the things that you use your back for. So many things we take for granted until it comes to that point, right? But what is the back? Of course, the back is a place of support. It's a sort of an obvious metaphysical meaning in this case. So what do we do? How do we care for our backs? Do you slouch and roll your shoulders forward? A lot of us do, and all the things we do with computers and driving and so on. But we gift our backs when we strengthen our cores, when we strengthen our backs, when we do good ergonomics to support our backs, and when we stretch and do those kinds of things. And so all of those ways that we can care for the back is a way that we begin to support ourselves on our journey in every way, body, mind, and spirit. Do you remember New Thought teacher Louise Hay? Yeah, a lot of you do. Yeah, so her work has always been about healing, although the first thing I always think when I think Louise Hay is, love yourself. Remember her saying that? She would always say that. And so she was a big loss to the New Thought community when she made her transition, but of course she's probably doing fabulous work in the next dimension. And Louise would talk about, even in older age, how every day she would hang on a bar and stretch out her back, and then she would lift her legs up and curl her legs to strengthen her back and her core. And that her back felt fantastic and supportive. That's the spiritual backbone that we create for ourselves. And so Louise would say that, of course, the back means support metaphysically. And her metaphysics, her sort of metaphysical dictionary, if you will, of the body, helps us understand when we do have dis-ease or tension or pain or discomfort, that it's our body saying, hello, something to pay attention to here. And it's not always just a physical thing. It can be that's hence the word metaphysical, beyond the physical. It can be something that has an emotional healing component to it, something that is awaiting a spiritual breakthrough, an opportunity for us to learn. So Louise says that the low back can be specifically a fear of financial security, or fear of some lack around financial support. In my experience, it can be all kinds of different support. She delineates the low back, the mid back, the upper back in different ways. But regardless, we're talking about support, right? Being supported and being supportive in whatever ways that may be. So our low backs can also call out for us and help us to ask it. It's like a reminder to trust the cellular wisdom of the body and ask what is needed. What is needed in this moment in order to be supported? What is needed for you to support yourself? What is needed for you to be able to support another? It's always a good question to take into the heart, isn't it? And this power of strength reminds us of this importance. Strength often involves resourcefulness. When we get through things, it's because we are able to be resourceful. So about 1.5 years ago, I was coming home from a spiritual retreat, and my partner, Brenley, said, I have a surprise for you. And you know how when you get to know your partner really well, you can tell by the tone of the voice whether, which kind of surprise it is. Is it really a surprise for me, or is it a surprise for you that you're hoping I'll like, or is it a, surprise you're not sure I'm going to like, So anyway, I get home, and there's this puny little dog. The dog has been rescued from a place where there were squatters. He's malnourished, or he's undernourished anyway. He's very skinny. He actually kind of looked like a little Tasmanian devil with, like how they have that barrel chest and then they taper down to almost nothing, like a little bodybuilder, right? But he's so skinny, so small. And then his fur, he had hardly any fur. He had these long gray wisps of hair here and there. But he was, partially bald. He was rashy. He was constantly scratching. He had not been house trained, and he was about 8 years old or 9 years old, and he was marking. Shall I go on? His nails were curved into his pads, and so he was waddling a little bit. I mean, truly our hearts go out to him, right, with great compassion. And she was so excited. She's like, I think we should name him Samson for how strong he's been and all he's gone through. You know, you probably know the biblical character Samson, right? The strong man that his strength was in his hair. And so, you know, the hope was Samson will grow his hair back and he will get his strength back, right? He'll get his full strength back. So I can't say I was totally smitten with the little dog, I have to say. I mean, I was taken with his condition and his situation, and I was, of course, watching my beloved fall in love. Only a mother could love kind of, you know, that situation, right? And so due to the marking problem, we would put he and our dog Dakota behind this fence when we went to work. And I would come home at lunch, and it was the biggest mystery. This dog was like barely 12 pounds. We've never had a dog so small. And we had, just for extra security, pushed the armchair and the heavy end table against one side of the fence and this big vase against the other side of the fence, and Brentley had even put a stone in there. And somehow, this dog was free when I would come home. It was like some kind of magic. It was like, I would literally stand there and go, did he go over the fence? He couldn't climb that fence. You know, I mean, I was just trying to figure it out. And day after day, this would happen. And so we put more rocks in the vase, and it didn't matter, one side or the other, he would figure it out and he would be out. And so what we realized, it was the power of strength coupled with the power of will, right? Sheer determination that I will not be left again is the way I understood it. Just as I began to receive nurturance, just as I began to get these needs met of affection and nutrition and clean water, you're going to leave? I will not be left. So little Samson would break out every day. And in time, every day I would hold him and remind him that we always come back. And in time, he got it. He started to trust. His power of faith started to kick in. He started to realize I don't have to use the sheer willpower through my body to get out, because they will come back and they will open the fence and they will hold me and they will give me a treat. So over time, this little guy, of course, has worked his way completely into my heart, but he was a tough one for some time for us. And Samson's strength reminds me of how we ourselves have to sometimes in life move through incredible obstacles to get our needs met, or to get the needs met of our family or someone else. Some people go through this kind of life every day. Every day is a waking up to move through enormous obstacles to get simple needs met. Thank God how grateful, we feel. I think those of us who know that that is not our everyday reality, that we are privileged to not live in that kind of survival mode day after day after day. And we can all relate to times in our lives when we have had to move cars, move mountains, so to speak, to have something met that was needed. Sometimes even basic needs. And so we can relate to this idea that we exercise this power. And when we do, our body, mind, and spirit comes together in this strength and takes care of whatever needs to be taken care of. We become vital and more healthy, just as Samson has over time. Let's take a look at his before and after. This is puny Samson and strong Samson. So all his hair came back really thick, and he likes to hike. He also likes to be carried still, but So there he is. Praise to Samson, huh? These little beings, right? Who rescues who? We always get reminded, right, that we are the ones who get rescued. Our hearts get opened. Our compassion gets stirred. Our sense of love and affection and joy gets fulfilled by these beautiful animals. The Zen Buddhist Roshi Joan Halifax coined the phrase, strong back, soft front. Strong back, soft front. In our culture, we often confuse this, right? We think strength is this idea of strong back, strong front. And really how that ends up showing up when we make the strong front, the armored front, the front that doesn't allow in or out, the love and the compassion and the connection and all those things that come from the heart. we end up with a weak back and a strong front. And so it is by allowing, instead of shielding our weak spine through defensiveness and trying to hide or conceal the fact that we don't feel particularly confident, we do this dance of trying to make a strong front. I mean, Samson did it too. He would growl at us a lot in the beginning. He actually bit both of us a couple of times. And over time, though, he softened. Now he turns over and we rub his belly, and there's a softness, right? And it's, again, the same with us, right? We go from that armored up space to rub my belly kind of openness. And it is because we are willing to step into what Joan is talking about, a strong back, a spiritual backbone that is both sturdy and flexible, that we build over time through exercising and flexing this muscle of the power of spiritual strength. And then by staying open here, because we know we've got our own back and we've got each other's backs. And so we know that there is a strength that holds us, that allows us to flex when the winds blow, and that we can stay open, therefore, because there is a sense of trust and faith. Once again, the brother comes in, right? So when we let down our guards, a lot opens up for us, doesn't it? When we open our hearts, or at least are willing not to just shut it down, a lot can happen for us in our world that wouldn't otherwise happen. We get the courage to do things, and that comes from the heart. So there is this interplay between all these different powers. You see how strength and faith and then love can interact with one another. Will, as I mentioned earlier. What really is this power of strength is that we think of it often as a masculine power. And remember, the masculine and the feminine is wed within all of us, regardless of gender. So we need both of those energies, the masculine and the feminine. The masculine is often action. And when we think of masculinity as strength, in our culture, we often think of that as physical, right? Physical strength, limited to physical strength. And we think, and then to be manly, to be masculine is to be emotionally guarded. But of course, we know on our spiritual journeys that doesn't work, having that armored front. So it is the soft front that allows us to move into those possibilities that are before us, for our potentiality to be who we have truly come here to be. And what the sacred masculine is really support. The sacred masculine supports, not in a pejorative way, not in a superior kind of way, but as equal partners. The sacred masculine is sort of, if you imagine the strong arms that come around you and help lift you up, but not because you're weak, because there is a strength seen in you. It's the power of strength meeting the power of strength, the divine meeting the divine in one another, beholding that truth and calling it forth. Speaking to the strength that you see in another, or sharing in some other way, some other reflective way, some demonstration of your trust in another. All those ways are ways that we can show up in this aspect of strength in the sacredness of the masculine, in support. And that can be reliable and solid, and it is also about honesty, right? And being honest is also about this sort of soft-fronted bravery that allows us to be vulnerable, that allows us to be open, that allows ourselves to feel messy and broken at times. And that's where we actually get our strength, interestingly. So if we're armored up, we're never going to really experience our strength. It's just going to be a facade. Spiritual nourishment is how we keep up our strength, right? Just like with physical nourishment. You wouldn't go out and run a marathon if you weren't nourished, most likely, physically. And so the same thing is true for our spiritual walk. We can't ignite these powers. We can't be the best that we can be. We can't remember the I am that I am, the truth of who we are, unless we are properly nourished. And so how do we spiritually nourish ourselves so that we can overcome challenges, so that we can manifest our dreams? Let's look at a few ways we can flex that spiritual muscle. So one is to meditate, and we can specifically ignite this low back power of strength by using that color green, allowing yourself just to breathe into the low back and imagine with every breath, this light green color is expanding in that whole area, and then eventually covering your whole back and your whole being and beyond. And so working with both the color and the power and the place in your body and you could do that in many different ways. This is just one suggestion of a meditation. Stretching and supporting your low back while affirming that you are strong and flexible, that you have a strong and flexible spiritual backbone. Consider what is the most important conversation that you need to stop telling yourself, right? The thing that weakens you. That's the thing you need to stop so you can start strengthening yourself. So just stop it. Easier said than done, I know. But at least the awareness comes, right? And that's a first step. And then finally, consider a conversation you need to have with another person. Maybe it's a tough conversation. Maybe it's a conversation that's needed to be had for many decades. And you know that this is your next step, and it's maybe a hard one, but you have the strength within you to move forward, to free yourself from that. And so you can do so with a strong back and a soft front and go and have that conversation. These are just a few of the ways that we can flex that spiritual muscle of strength. The prophet Isaiah says essentially this: those who wait on the divine, or those who hope in the divine, will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So this week, let's work on developing our power of strength. And we can do that by asking, by listening to our own bodies, by listening to our own hearts, and figuring out what it is that we need, hearing what it is that we need. And we can do it by offering stable and flexible support to others. So let's know this power, let's affirm this power together, let's be this power throughout our week. Let's say it together. My spiritual backbone is supported and supportive. I am strong. So it is.